There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode of the Western Huntsman podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. And this week, we have got a new guest or a new friend of mine who is a writer for Field and Stream magazine. And I'm going to have him explain it, actually. So let's welcome Travis Hall. Travis, I appreciate you joining me, man.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of your show. So it's awesome to be here talking to you tonight.
No, that's cool. It was fun seeing because you messaged me saying, "Hey, I mentioned your podcast in this article that you had written about the wolves," and I was pretty flattered, man. That's awesome. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So I feel like I was you're like going places when Field and Stream recognizes your podcast.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. That podcast was really helpful for me in just trying to wade through that issue. So, I appreciate you having that content out there. That's good stuff.
Yeah, we should touch on that in a little bit. That particular issue, because it is a complicated, muddy water to wade your way through. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I really liked having the director on to talk about it because he's got a really good pulse as to what the situation is with the wolves and just wildlife management in general in the state of Idaho. So, Travis, let's start with give everybody kind of the bird's eye view of your background, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm the associate editor for Field and Stream magazine. I've been with the magazine for about 6 months now. I've been a full-time writer for probably close to 10 years now. I've focused on the outdoors and more recently just kind of really honed in on hunting and fishing and conservation. But yeah, super excited to be with Field and Stream full time these days and just totally immersed in the outdoor news cycle, the hunting and fishing beat. I mean, there's just no shortage of good stuff to write about.
Because I'm on this, the Field and Stream, what do they call this? Like the Travis Hall page or whatever, kind of gives you your bio and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It says, he graduated Southern Indiana University of Southern Indiana, in 2012 with a degree in journalism. It was the goal always to be like an outdoors hunting and fishing writer, or how did that come about?
I would say, yeah, that's kind of why I got into it in the first place. I mean, I kind of remember being in high school, trying to track out some sort of career path and just thinking, how can I couple a career path with my passion for hunting and fishing and just being outside. Had a little bit of a knack for writing. One of the few things that I excelled in academically. So, and I was, crazy enough, I was a big reader of Field and Stream back then. And I was kind of like, these guys writing in this magazine, this is what I would like to do if I could somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that is the reason I went down that path is because I wanted to get into a career that had something to do with hunting and fishing and the outdoors in general.
So before you wrote for Field and Stream, was it something that like as a writer, I'm always curious about this because I'm like a half-ass writer, man. And I'm always curious about you. Before you were there, you were like this freelance writer. What was that like? What did you do as like a freelance writer?
That was an interesting lifestyle. I mean, I was before I came on full time with Field and Stream. I was writing for doing some freelance stuff with them, and just other publications like Meat Eater. But yeah, that was, I would say that I love the freelance lifestyle. I love the freedom of it, but
Yeah.
I kind of, I also love the stability of being full time. I probably prefer that over that, but yeah, when I was freelancing, I was just kind of all over the board, just constantly pitching and trying to develop relationships with editors and seeing what I could come up with. But
Was it like stressful trying to keep a steady flow of income while writing for all these different platforms or whatever? Does that make, like, was it stressful doing that?
yeah, it was stressful at times. Like, you're always kind of at the whims of the budgetary constraints of the respective magazines that you write for. Um, so that could be stressful because sometimes those budgets will dry up or they go in different directions and they move money
Yeah.
around. Um, I'd go through spells where the work was just really flowing great, but there were times when it started to look, uh, it just wasn't quite steady. So yeah, I'd say that was definitely stressful at times.
So now you and your wife live in Montana's Bitterroot Valley.
Yep, yes, sir.
Just a terrible, ugly, horrible part of the country to be in.
Pretty rough. Yeah.
It's got to be pretty rough.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't John Denver sing a song about the Bitterroot Valley at some point?
I think
He was born in the Bitterroot. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I remember it. What's that? What brought you to the Bitterroot Valley, man?
Man, so that's an interesting story in and of itself. I mean, my wife and I met working out in Yellowstone National Park. It's probably been 12 years now, but she's from South Carolina originally. We met working out there in college and I ended up living in South Carolina for a long time and in her hometown. And we both just always wanted to get back out west because it was just kind of in our souls after being in Yellowstone. And we finally decided to just pick up and move. And it's almost been 2 years now. She was pregnant with our now 2-year-old child, and she wasn't pregnant. She was pregnant when we decided to do it, but he was about 6 months old when we took off. We took off in a travel trailer and traveled all over the West. Spent a lot of time in Idaho, just kind of scoping out different towns. Spent some time in Wyoming and Southwest Montana around the Bozeman area, and we came to Missoula, which neither of us had ever been to Missoula before, and we came there and we liked it. But then we drove into the Bitterroot, and we were just kind of like blown away by it. Neither of us had ever been here, and we fell in love with it, and we stayed, and here we are.
Yeah, so you were cruising around in like a travel trailer, you're just like scouting different places to live. That's what you guys were doing?
Essentially, yeah. Yeah, that's what we did for probably close to 5 or 6 months.
Wow, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, it was a heck of an experience, man. We got
there. Oh, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, you're good. Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. We got to see a lot of the West that we'd never seen before, and definitely broaden our perspective about the West in general. So I enjoyed it for the world.
It's interesting because I know I know where you're at. And there is like this for anybody that hasn't been through the Bitterroot Valley. As you head south out of Missoula, that highway will take you all the way through the Bitterroot Valley and up and over that pass and drop you down basically into Salmon, Idaho.
Yep.
Super cool drive. If people are looking for like a scenic road trip, definitely put that on the list. But definitely. The fly fishing sucks there, though, huh?
Oh yeah, it's terrible from what I hear. It's just
that's what I hear. I don't want to. I don't even want to talk about the fly fishing in the Bitterroot Valley.
Yeah, there's really no point, in touching on it, and people definitely should and visit and try it. No, I mean it's top notch from what I hear. I've fished a lot, but I'm still kind of just like barely above a novice. So my goal is to get better, and I think I'm in the right place to do that.
Yeah, the nice thing about somewhere like the Bitterroot Valley, if you're just kind of cutting your teeth on fly fishing, it's not easy fly fishing, but it's not like super challenging fly fishing. It's kind of that. Well, I always kind of look at it as like this mid, I guess, difficulty level. Uh-huh. And the reason why I think that's good is because it'll make you. It puts you in all sorts of different circumstances that if you travel throughout the rest of the American West with a fly rod, you're going to be effective everywhere.
Right.
And so that's what I love about it. I'm going to have to come and see you, man. We're going to go throw a fly rod around for a little bit.
Yeah, man.
So getting back to this writing thing, I'm super curious about the job itself. Obviously you must work remote, right?
I do, yeah. I'm fully remote, and all the guys that I work with were all pretty well remote.
Are they like? Because Field and Stream, aren't they based out of like New York or something?
Yeah, that's our original offices are in New York City. Excuse me, but the parent company, if you will, that owns us I believe has offices in Miami and maybe even San Francisco, but there's still an office in New York, as far as I know.
So I just want to read off some of for people listening. I keep saying magazine, man. You basically, when you're writing these articles, because you pump out a lot of articles, are these articles that are going in the magazine, or are they mainly like almost blog format on the website?
So we are fully digital these days.
You are? Okay.
Yeah. Field and Stream is fully digital. I write pretty much quick turn news articles a lot, and those are going straight onto the website immediately when they're published. We also have a platform that's called FNS Plus, and that's some of our more exclusive content that is going to be, more similar to some of the stuff that you would have seen in the print magazine back in the day. So that's the more highly produced, more deeply reported content that you'll see there. But that's a premium subscription model. But most of my day is finding relevant news in the outdoor space and turning it around pretty quickly. And that goes straight onto the website.
And walk me through the history of Field and Stream, man, because I think, I don't know that there's an outdoorsman out there that doesn't know Field and Stream. I grew up reading, Eastman's hunting journals and Field and Stream. And I don't know, there was a couple of bow hunting ones that I read. Of course, that wasn't growing up. That was when I was a little older, in my 20s or whatever. Anyway, the history of Field and Stream goes back, 130 years or something like that?
Yeah, it goes way back, and I wish I could tell you the exact year, but I feel like it dates back to probably the late 1800s. And
I could tell you the year. It was 1895, and the only reason I know that is because I was arguing with Matt Ranella.
Okay.
on one of my podcasts, and I was looking up, hunting media and how it applies to like in the historical context or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they go back a long ways, I guess. And so I didn't know, man, that they've kind of done away with the print model.
Yeah. We're fully digital. That I believe is about maybe 2 years. I don't know. It preceded my time with the magazine. They've been fully digital since before I came on, but it's kind of the way of the world, and a lot of print journalism these days has kind of fallen to the wayside. But luckily we're still cranking out some of that premium content that is very similar to what we used to have in the print product. It's all digital now, and in some ways, even a better reading experience than it was back then. But I'm a sucker for a print magazine or a print book. It's hard to substitute that, having that in your hands, that tangible product.
Yeah, it's so. That's the thing with all of this when you're just talking about hunting media in general, and books. Like I love books. I don't read all of them, but I buy books like crazy, like actual hard physical books, because I still love having the copy. And it's the same with magazines. I still like magazines because it just gives you a little bit different perspective. But the digital part is nice because you can. If my wife puts on some dumb show I don't want to watch or something at night, I can open up my phone and read, like I like your headlines. Florida researchers tracked down and killed a giant Burmese python after it ate a collared possum. Like that grabs my attention, man.
Yeah.
I want to read that.
Good. I'm glad that one did it for you. That one went up today.
Oh, it did? That's a brand new one.
Yeah.
And then the one I want to point listeners to is Idaho unveils plan to reduce wolf populations by 60%. Right. And obviously, just because, you mentioned this show in it. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about this one article, and I haven't read it, and I kind of did that on purpose because I have a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
The article you have, feds will consider removing grizzly bears from endangered species list in Montana and Wyoming. Where are we at with that from what you know by writing this article?
From my understanding at the moment is, so the Fish and Wildlife Service has, trying to remember, they've recommended delisting of grizzly bears. And
what did you say that is the feds have reviewed that and recommended delisting, or a state?
So it's the feds, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. And I don't even know if it goes quite as far as a recommendation. It's almost like another review, but they have decided that they meet certain recovery criteria enough to warrant another review. Like, it's not like grizzly bears are going to be delisted anytime soon necessarily, but the slow moving cogs are at least seem to be in motion for right now. That would be
so I'm reading this. It's talking about neighboring states requested state control over the management of grizzly bear populations in the Rocky Mountain ecosystems, two of them, which is Glacier Park there on kind of northwestern Montana, the Northern Continental Divide, which is kind of that Yellowstone ecosystem.
Right.
I hate the line, a third petition seeking to list grizzly populations in Idaho was denied because that irritates me. I think they need to delist them here.
Right.
What is your thoughts on the whole topic of grizzly bears and delisting them, and where do you stand with all that?
If you just want my general opinion, it seems like, and this is, I'm not a grizzly bear researcher, and there are a lot of people that know a heck of a lot more about this than me, but it seems like they have met the criteria for recovery in, at least these zones like the GYE and the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem. It seems like they're there. Like they don't seem to me like an endangered species anymore.
Well, yeah, and they're not. They're just still listed. It's such a conundrum, because what happens is it's just like the wolf situation, man, where we reach population objectives, and then it goes through where the states petition to have state management over these animals. Because these objectives have been met, which was the agreement in the beginning, and then it gets turned over for approval and whatnot, and then here come the lawsuits from like these pro grizzly bear, these groups that are centered around one particular species is usually what it is. And you've got these grizzly bear groups, you've got these wolf groups that act like they know better than everybody else, and they act like they have this moral high ground. Because they don't want any hunting. But here's a couple things that I know about grizzly bears. Is per capita, Alaska has way more grizzly bears than the lower 48. We're talking Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, which are, the three states. And I think, I don't know. If somebody's listening that knows this, I want to say that there is a known population in the state of Washington. But I don't know that for sure. But if you know, hit me up at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, because I'd be super curious. But we're talking about the tri-state Northern Rocky region.
Right.
So Alaska has a higher grizzly bear population per capita than our Northern Rocky Mountain region, but yet has a less human interaction per capita rate than the lower 48 states. Right. So, and I know I've talked about this on the podcast, but and what happens with bears is when they think that they're king shit on the landscape, they have nothing to fear. That's when they get brazen and start doing things like, the human interactions. That's where those come from. Right. That's why in Alaska they've got this robust hunting season for grizzly and brown bears, and that's why these bears are a lot more timid around humans. It's the same concept, again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record based on past episodes, but it's the same concept with human interactions in like the state of Idaho, who's probably one of the most, maybe it's a bold statement, Travis, but I would argue that Idaho is one of the most aggressive predator management / black bear hunting states that we have. When you compare like Idaho and Montana black bear interactions to somewhere like New Jersey, where they banned black bear hunting, the human interactions are completely different. Our bears here are terrified of human interaction because they have they understand, due to the nature of our hunting seasons, to avoid humans. Right. Where that becomes a problem are places like, Lake Tahoe or New Jersey, or these places where there's not these robust or aggressive hunting seasons, to teach these bears the nature of avoiding human interaction. Right. And I think that that's what happens here. And that's why we have so many bear, attacks and human interactions here in the Northern Rocky Mountain region with these grizzly bears. And it's making me nervous, like looking into the next 10 years, when, thinking about hunting in the backcountry and whatnot, where these grizzlies exist. Do you worry about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, being here in the Bitterroot, from what I gather, again, I haven't been here very long, but it seems like, at least in the most recent history, there haven't been a lot of grizzly bears in this area, but they're definitely making their way in. They're moving over. There was a few that had to be removed up just north of where I'm at, in the Sapphire Mountains this year. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why they shouldn't be hunted. If they've reached full recovery, I feel like they shouldn't be exempt from state management. And you mentioned New Jersey, and you saw what kind of played out there when the governor banned grizzly bear hunting as part of his campaign.
Black bear hunting in New Jersey, right?
Black bears, yeah.
Yeah.
The human interactions just went completely through the roof, and the folks there just decided that they couldn't tolerate it anymore, and now they've got some seasons again. But it seems to me like
it was like when Aunt Betty is afraid to take the trash out at night because of the bear problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these bears have no fear or no natural fear over humans,
right?
That's when these problems exist. That's why there's trash cans knocked over and garbage spread all over the place and people getting attacked and mauled and pets getting killed and, dogs getting drug out of the backyard and mama bears bringing their cubs into the backyard to swim in somebody's pool. Right. That kind of stuff just doesn't really happen in Idaho. I mean, we get the occasional trash can knocked over. And whatnot, but the difference is it only like when we're talking about grizzly bears, I'm curious what you think about this. Like when we're talking about grizzly bears, when you look at the map of the ecological landscapes that have and hold grizzly bears, in my opinion, 2 hunting tags, whether these hunters were successful or not, but 2 hunting tags in each of these regions, I think would go a long way to teaching these grizzly bears that human interaction is bad, and not only would that save grizzly bears because they're not going to get themselves in trouble. Like this last summer, we had a grizz come down into a town just to the north of us. They ended up having to get euthanized because it was eating some livestock like goats or something. I don't know what it was. I can't remember now, but it was funny how that played out too, Travis, because it was like. The bear came down and they gave it the old dart so they can put a collar on it or whatever,
right?
And then they relocated it, and I specifically said on the show that bear is going to end up in the same spot and then he's going to get euthanized. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, no shit, like 2 months later, that bear ended up in the same spot and got euthanized.
Really?
And so. If we had like 2 tags for that particular part of like North Idaho, I'm talking about like the Cabinet Mountain Range, I feel like just that effort would make grizzly bears think twice about coming into town. I don't know. Am I off base?
No, I think you're right on. And I mean, what it all really comes down to too is the nature of the Endangered Species Act, and it was never intended. When a species goes on the Endangered Species Act, they're not supposed to stay on that forever. I mean, there's a recovery objective that's put in place, and when that objective is met, then those animals should be removed from that federal protection, and the state should have the opportunity to manage through hunting. And I just obviously the grizzly bear is a very iconic creature that tugs at heartstrings, and that's why you see so much reluctance to follow through with what's supposed to be these recovery.
Man, you make a really good point. The general idea of the Endangered Species Act was to protect animals that were endangered and get them back to a healthy point in which they would not need to be on this list anymore. Mm-hmm. And, because that's the objective, to move these species from endangered to no longer endangered. And it's been hijacked by these anti-hunting groups and these animal activist groups to the point where it's diminished the credibility of the ESA.
Right.
And I think that's where we run into issues, like the Endangered Species Act, it just doesn't hold any real credible water to me anymore because it gets abused by these animal rights activists. And I think that in the long run, that is going to backfire on them who are not conservationists, they're preservationists, they're protectionists.
Right.
and it's going to backfire on them to a point in which nobody's going to have the stomach to put an animal or a species onto the Endangered Species Act. As a writer, with what you do for a living, Travis, what kind of interactions do you experience or see with these animal activist groups? Is there something you could speak to on that?
I don't have a lot of personal interactions with them, to be honest. I follow what they do in the media, and I follow a lot of the press releases that they put out. But I'm not. It's not like I'm interacting with them on a personal basis at all, really. But
yeah,
I have. I recently reported on a proposed trapping ban in the state of Vermont that seems to be picking up some steam, and this would basically just ban recreational trapping in Vermont completely. There would be no more regulated trapping other than government agents doing nuisance trapping or hired trappers maybe, but it seems like those folks over there are pretty mobilized, and I think I've been getting some kind of off-putting Instagram messages from some of these groups that are trying to do that. So
really?
I guess if I had to point to one thing, yeah, that might be it.
Let's take a quick time out so I can offer a couple of words from our sponsors. The first one being Eastman's Hunting Journals. Guys, they got the magazine, they got the Mule Deer Course, which is an online e-course for you mule deer hunting enthusiasts like me out there. And they got Tag Hub if you're looking to do the research you need to find the right tag to fit your budget and your time frame. Check it all out at eastmans.com. Next is Phelps Game Calls. Guys, Huntsman 10 will get you 10% off at Phelps Game Calls, from elk calls, predator calls, deer calls, turkey calls, all the calls you want this coming season. Spring turkey is just around the corner, so make sure you're checking them out. I like the Black Bat. And last but not least is Hoffman Boots, my boot of choice. One of the most underrated boots that nobody talks about for hunters. Go to hoffmanboots.com and at checkout use promo code Huntsman10, all caps lock, for 10% off your new favorite pair of hunting boots. And folks, if you're loving the show, if you're loving the podcast, please go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and write a good review for us. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way to help us with the show and our mission. The Western Huntsman, brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Check it out. You're talking about this bill H-191 threatens the future of recreational trapping in the Green Mountain State. That
one.
Let's see. I've got all your articles here pulled up, man. So make this easy. Prohibit the trapping of fur-bearing animals unless the trapping is done, quote, in order to defend property or agricultural crops, end quote. So it would essentially end recreational trapping. Trapping gets a bad rap, man, and it's like an easy target for these animal activists.
Yeah, it's
and
group for sure.
Yeah. Fur-bearing animals unless the trapping is done. So, that's why I think that's important and relevant for people to consider and like kick around in from a sense of, there's a lot of us have discussed the concept of death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Yeah.
Where we talk about how these animal activists are looking to take one thing at a time, so it's not like this big eyebrow-raising thing, until they get to big eyebrow-raising things like, banning deer hunting or something crazy like that,
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is when a bill like this is introduced, let's say it passes. Right. The flip side to that is, instead of the state fish and wildlife agencies generating revenues for, through trapping licenses and tag sales and whatnot, they end up having to foot the bill to control these animals that then go out of control, because wildlife just doesn't manage itself. And that's the fantasy these activists fall into.
Right.
have you ever done a story on um the California situation with mountain lions and like the disparity between what formerly when mountain lion hunting was still legal in the state of California, the revenue side of that contributed, not only to the wildlife agency itself, the state agency itself for operating expenses, but there's a portion of that goes towards habitat improvement and conservation efforts and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Versus today, the absolute financial hole
Right.
that overpopulated mountain lions have created that the California taxpayers have to pay now because they don't allow them to hunt. Have you ever done anything on that?
I haven't done anything that kind of looks back at the history of the mountain lion thing in California. I've done some more recent stuff on efforts to, I think it was to try to ban black bear hunting not too long ago. But
Yeah. That was a couple years ago. The San Francisco legislator, Senator Weiner.
Right.
I always like to bring up his name.
Yeah.
Because he's a wiener.
Right.
Tried to ban black bear hunting.
Yeah. So I've followed some of that and the more recent things, and I've researched the history of what's gone on there in California. But yeah, they're kind of like the tip of the spear when it comes to losing hunting rights. It's kind of sad what's gone on here.
What about this recent noise coming out of Washington? They've been going through the whole fiasco of losing the spring bear hunt.
Yeah.
What about this recent noise about the Commissioner Lorna Smith and this whole? And I don't have the details on this yet, Travis. Like maybe we should partner up and figure out what's going on with this. But there is something about this Commissioner Lorna Smith, and by the time this episode is live, I'm going to know all this, so I kind of feel dumb saying it now. But something about how she's trying to redefine what wildlife management is in the state of Washington in an effort to remove as much hunting as possible. If I'm understanding it, I've got a couple of buddies over there like Mike Hers and a couple of guys I need to call and find out more. But do you know anything about that, first of all?
I reported quite a bit on the Washington spring bear debacle last year when it was all just really unfolding. I'm pretty familiar with Lorna Smith. I sat through a lot of those commission meetings, just watching to try to understand what they had going on. But it seems like there's a pretty open and obvious attempt amongst those game commissioners there to, just kind of, like you said, decouple hunting and any kind of harvest-based wildlife management strategy from the state agency. It's pretty terrifying what's happening in Washington.
Yeah. Here's your article, November 22. Washington State Fish and Game Commission votes to ban spring bear hunting. Is that like a constant? Do you have like a specific interest in the animal activists or anti-hunting movement in terms of reporting on that? Is that something you kind of look for, or
absolutely.
How do you fall into that?
Yeah, I just try to keep an eye on it, and it's something that I definitely feel compelled to report about when I see it happening. But
and you've obviously seen a bunch of it. So, what is your reaction when you see some of these like heinous actions that some of these activist groups, come up with? These heinous ideas. They're just so far removed from reality. It's just laughable in a lot of cases, except it's not, because people take them serious and people do it, and they push this legislation. Like, what's your reaction to a lot of that?
Yeah, I think in recent years I've come to understand the gravity of it more. I mean, I think it was easier, years ago. I grew up hunting in southern Indiana, and I didn't follow the anti-hunting movement too much, and it was kind of easy to write it off as, oh, these, this isn't something that's really going to come and threaten your rights, your hunting rights. These are just, people are making much ado about nothing. But when you really dig in, you realize that they've made a lot of headway, and if they're allowed to go unchecked, then they'll succeed, and like they have in California and like they are in Washington right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Short attention span here, but you said something that just kind of popped it into my mind. I have a buddy who lives in Indiana.
Okay.
And he is of the opinion, and I want to get your take on this because you grew up there and you grew up hunting there. Mm-hmm. He is of the opinion, and I don't want to like give away secrets or anything, dude, so I'm always cautious with this, but he is of the opinion that Indiana is one of the most underrated whitetail deer hunting states in the Union. Mm-hmm. How much merit does this statement hold?
I feel like in recent years, Indiana has kind of had a spotlight shined on it because there have been so many big bucks killed. I mean, they just had I don't know if it was the Boone and Crockett typical world record come out of there. But I would have agreed with him 10 years ago, but now it seems like they're right up there at the top of the list with some of the best whitetail states in the nation. A lot of people would say that, but the thing about Indiana, having grown up there, is there's just not a whole lot of access to public ground. So it's like you got to have some land or know somebody, and that's what I always ran into. I loved hunting there.
How did you navigate that? Did you have to just go knock on doors and try to get access to private property or kind of thing?
We did some of that for sure. I mean, we did that for turkey hunting, and I think we got in the door with some whitetail hunting that way. But I hunted with my cousin on some like reclaimed coal property, and it might have been a gray area, to be honest. I don't know how legal it was, but we were just hunting strip mine area that was kind of, these coal companies still owned it, but they weren't actively mining, and they might be getting around to mining it again in 10 years. But in the meantime, it was just prime whitetail habitat, and we were in there hunting that all the time.
So going from a kid from Indiana, hold on. Can you still hear me, Travis?
I can hear you. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just trying to figure out. I just got like this error message on this recorder. There we go. I think we're good. All right, I'm just going to carry on like it didn't happen.
Okay.
So going from a kid out in Indiana hunting whitetail, and then you'd mentioned you lived in South Carolina for a bit, which I lived in North Carolina when I was in the military, and then so I kind of know like landscape wise, I'm pretty familiar with South Carolina. There's some big bucks there, by the way.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, and then coming out west to somewhere like the Bitterroot Valley. Mm-hmm. Can describe the life difference, like the overarching difference in lifestyle and hunting opportunity between all those places.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming to the amount of public hunting ground that you have access to. Just deciding where to go and what to do, it's almost overwhelming to me. I mean, it's amazing. Just the overall lifestyle change. I mean, I just feel like everything is a little slower out here, and everything is more spread out, and it's just bigger and obviously more beautiful. But I would say, I'm overwhelmed by the sheer opportunity that you have when it comes to hunting big game species out here.
I remember when I was in the service, I had a buddy. Where the heck was he from? I want to say it was like Illinois, or not Illinois. God, I went to his wedding, man. I can't even remember what state he lived in.
But it was somewhere kind of bordering the East and Midwest, right?
Okay.
And real good farmland habitat. Maybe it was Iowa. Anyway, irrelevant at this point. Dude, I'm getting old, man. It looked like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, probably. So one of our leave times we were able to go on leave, he came home with me to Utah.
Okay.
And because I was raised in Utah, and so I took him to Utah. He was like gonna stay with me for a couple of nights, and then he was gonna go on to another friend's house out in California, and so he'd fly out of Salt Lake and head over there. But in the meantime, I took him out to do some. It was like out of season. We went and did some jackrabbit hunting, which you could back in those days. You probably still can, but you can hunt jackrabbits anytime.
Yeah.
And he'd never been out west, and he was almost like, it was almost stressful for him, the amount of like land and the distance that you could see. Like the skyline was so much further than what he was used to. And I know what he feels like, because when I landed in North Carolina for the first time, when I got stationed out there, there was like a sense of, I had this like almost claustrophobic feeling.
I bet.
Where it was so flat and there was all these trees and like you just can't see very far.
Right.
And so I'm always interested in how people react to these different regions of the country and how different. Like I don't think a lot of people understand how different things are, from like the Southeast to the Midwest to the Western states to the West Coast or the Northeast even.
Yeah.
You look at overlaying Europe over the United States, the lower 48, and you're talking, you'd have multiple countries within that spread.
Right.
So now that you're out here, what's been like the biggest challenge for you hunting wise?
I think it's just trying to understand the patterns of species that I'm not familiar with at all, like elk and mule deer. I mean, I just grew up whitetail hunting, and even living in South Carolina, we were hunting mountain deer, mountain whitetails in the foothills of the Blue Ridge. But I feel like I'm starting from scratch on the elk hunting and mule deer hunting, and they're just such a different beast, because they're just constantly moving around the landscape. They're not like, obviously we have a lot of white-tailed deer here too that just hang out in the river bottoms, but I really want to get in, and I've gone on a couple of elk hunts with some folks that know what they're doing. But my goal is to become proficient in my own right. But that's my big challenge right now, I guess.
You are you, when you go elk hunting, are you are you mainly doing archery, or are you doing rifle, muzzleloader?
The last year I went on one archery hunt in, I guess it was probably like early October. We saw a ton of sign, and we got in a place where some elk had recently been, but they just were long gone. And then I went a couple times. I checked out some state-owned land during rifle season on my own, but just felt kind of clueless out there,
Yeah. Well, I know this place where you can learn a bunch about elk hunting.
Yeah. What's that?
You want me to fill you in? It's the School of September on the Western Huntsman podcast, brother.
Okay. I got to check out into that.
Yeah. We do a series where I'll bring in like some elk hunting expert like Dirk Durham, or I think I got Cody Rich said he'd come on for this year. So Cody's a good dude. Love to get him on, and we just kind of go through the motions. How do they hunt elk? The way, because everybody has their own style and their own process.
Right. And
so there's that, but I'm not trying to turn this into a big Western Huntsman podcast commercial, but we're going to be starting next month, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be all over that, man.
So as like a writer for Field and Stream, if you go out and let's say you call in like a big 6-point elk those big bulls on the ground. Is that something like you'd be able to write about in the magazine?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It would be up to me to pull it off, but I feel like I could get something pretty good out of a experience that profound. Some kind of narrative.
Yeah,
would definitely come of that.
What are your like aspirations when it comes to writing? Are you somebody who's looking like down the road to maybe write more on like a book kind of thing, or like tell me a little bit, what does writing mean to you first of all?
Yeah, I don't have any book projects in the works, but that's something that I definitely aspire to do. I don't really know what I would write a book about, but I guess that would just kind of, hopefully some kind of idea would materialize at some point. But right now, I'm pretty focused on just journalism in general and just reporting conservation related news stories and any other news that's relevant to our space. But if I had to pinpoint a calling, it's kind of, I'd say that conservation reporting is kind of where it's at for me right now.
And how do you even find these stories, man? Like, you got Maine hunter tags 9-point buck locked up with dead 10-pointer. You've got, let me go back over here and scroll up. You had some really interesting ones. 300 waterfowl dead in suspected bird flu. In Illinois, Idaho angler catch and releases new state record, ocean run coho salmon. 160 class Georgia giant and antler doe. Yeah. Caller, like, how do you find stories like that?
I do a lot of.
Do you just like?
I scour the internet a lot. I mean, I'm just gonna, I get a lot of press releases sent to me, and I'm just, constantly monitoring Google, and then sometimes I'll have sources that tip me off to stuff that's going on that's relevant, like the Vermont trapping bill that I recently wrote about. I had a retired game warden over there that I've quoted in previous stories about Vermont just reach out to me and let me know that was going on. But sometimes once in a blue moon, it'll fall into your lap like that. But I'm usually just kind of always on the hunt for stories, and Google is a big part of that. And just kind of monitoring press releases from state agencies and stuff like that.
Dude, I dig it, man, because I'm just so like the audience knows, I am on fieldandstream.com/author/Travis-Hall/. So again, it's like your author page or whatever, or your writer page. Right. It's got your bio and all that. And so is there, as I'm on this, because I'm going through all these different headlines and all these different, we do something similar over at Eastman's where there's like this constant flow of blog articles that are coming out regarding different, various topics, whatever. Right. Is there a way for me to sign up to just get your articles coming into my inbox? Because like there is a boatload of podcast material in just on your page.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a way to do that to just get mine, but we have a weekly newsletter that goes out. We have several different weekly newsletters, but that would probably be the best way if you wanted to get some of our content just straight into your email inbox. I would suggest going to the website and subscribing to our various newsletters.
The newsletter sign up, conservation, survival guns, gear, fishing.
And, a lot of my stuff is up in those, so it'll definitely come your way.
I'm just gonna keep this page open on my laptop here and just refresh it every day or something.
Yeah, there you go. You can do that too.
Like I don't know. I think it would be fun to periodically open up like a page like you've got here. And okay, you've got this article. Georgia hunter suffers hundreds of bite wounds during brutal dog attack in the woods. Like I could get that, and then I could track down this dude in Georgia and get him on the show and talk about this damn dog attack.
Yeah, you should do that, man. I talked to him the other day for about 45 minutes, and that was he went through a
Really?
horrible ordeal. Yeah, yeah. Um, he was,
dude. Look at his legs. That is brutal.
Yeah, he had 3 dogs going at him at once. He was trying to move one of his ladder stands, just doing some like routine off. I guess their season just ended. He was doing some of his routine off-season maintenance to his deer stands, and all of a sudden he had 3 dogs come in, and I think he said one started attacking him, and then the others just kind of joined in, like almost pack like mentality.
Yeah.
And yeah, that guy's probably lucky. He's lucky to be alive. It sounds like what he went through.
But like, what is it? Is it like wild dogs or like the neighbor's dogs?
I believe they were just stray dogs that a adjoining property owner or maybe a tenant on an adjoining piece of property owned. And I think some folks just let their dogs run wild. We deal with that, and I hunt in Kentucky with my cousins, and we'll deal with that once in a while. Just dogs come running through the woods, but these people here obviously were negligent dog owners, and these dogs were just out running wild, essentially. Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears here just real quick, because I found another topic that I'm really interested in, and I'm only interested in it. Well, I'm interested in it. It says, Wyoming looks to ban non-resident shed hunting for first 3 days of spring season.
Yeah, that's
a Wyoming bill. What kind of reaction did you get when you got that, when you published that?
We got, I had a guy that lives in Montana, actually, that goes to Jackson Hole every year to hunt sheds, email me, and he's very upset about that. Yeah, it seemed like most of the reaction that I saw was non-residents who were unhappy with this proposal.
Non-residents.
People that aren't residents.
Oh, you know what, Travis? I missed that. I just thought it was Wyoming looks to ban shed hunting for the first 3. I see what they're doing. They're trying to get rid of non-residents the first 3 days, giving that to residents only.
That's what they're proposing. Yeah, and I need to check back in on that one. I think it might have passed the House and it's on to the Senate, but they have some, I guess, pretty big issues around the elk refuge in Jackson with just crazy crowding.
Dude, it's a freaking dumpster fire. Yeah, it's a freaking dumpster fire. Yeah.
Have you been down there for it before?
So years ago I was, and I was actually rolling through town for a totally different reason. Mm-hmm. It just happened to be when the shed hunting season was starting or whatever. And I mean, there were people, it was like the entire world had descended on Jackson to go find sheds. And, for me, dude, I don't get it. I'm not a shed hunter. I could give 2 rips about going out and looking for sheds. I don't care. Right. It's just not my thing. And so I was surprised to see how serious some people take this shed hunting thing.
Yeah, it is.
But I've also, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it is definitely a big deal, and I feel like it's gotten more and more popular in recent years as these shed antlers have gone up in value. I mean, the dog chew market has exploded, and people are making some decent money doing this stuff, I guess.
Well, and I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody on social media, but social media has played a lot into this whole shed hunting craze, where people they go out and they act like they just put down a 300 class bull because they found the shed. Mm-hmm. And it's silly to me. I don't understand it. And I'm sure I'm going to get some nasty hate emails, whatever, about that. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's dumb. And it's just not impressive to me to go out and find sheds. I don't know. That's all beside the point, because I want to look at the issue of non-residents coming to Wyoming to shed hunt. Mm-hmm. And I think that people have this misconception that state wildlife agencies are there to manage for both residents and non-residents, which they're not. Mm-hmm. Every state agency is pretty clear on the fact that they are managing the wildlife to benefit the residents of the state of, said state, in this case, Wyoming. That ties into where they, one of the benefits is allowing non-residents to come in and do this or that because of the revenue that generates. And that helps keep, your basic resident deer tag price way down or whatever, because they just similarly, is that a word? You're a writer, man. You can fix my verbal grammar.
I think so. Similarly, we'll have to look it up.
If it's not, it's in the new Western Huntsman dictionary available on, somewhere. Yeah. But they just did something similar in Utah where they postponed or banned shed hunting until it's either May 1st or May 30th or sometime in May, I think. Mm-hmm. And people are in a freaking uproar about it. And it kind of, and I want to get your take on this, but my reaction to it is this, man. We've been talking about this all winter. Mm-hmm. If hunting is conservation, why in the hell? I'm trying to watch my mouth. Do you care if I swear? I cuss a little bit.
Not gonna hurt my feelings, man.
Okay. If hunting is conservation, why the fuck do we have people going out there in February and March scaring the crap out of these big game animals that are already struggling towards the end of a cold winter, high snow season, and really putting a bunch of added stress on them? And people are out there they're bitching about this whole banning shed hunting in Utah. Seriously, man, people are acting like it's ruining their life, that they can't go walk around and find antlers. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And it just bothers me, man. I mean, I don't think people understand the hardships of what a mule deer goes to in a heavy snow year, and how difficult it is for them to just scrape by until spring hits and the shrubs and everything else starts kind of coming back into season. And you're so enthralled by finding shed antlers because you want to look cool on social media and then run around claiming that you're some conservationist. It's so hypocritical.
Right. No, I definitely.
Yeah, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I definitely see your point there, and I definitely tend to agree with you. I mean, that was one big reason that these legislators have cited in trying to get this bill passed in Wyoming is these elk herds are, if it's been a tough winter, they're in dire straits almost towards the end of it, and you got people bumping them off beds, and what happens to animal, from an adrenaline standpoint, and just the sheer stress that can be put on an elk or a deer just by seeing people or smelling people from 100 yards away. I think it makes sense to regulate this stuff and kind of give those animals a break. Here in Bitterroot, where I'm at, we have a lot of winter range that stays closed until a certain time of year. And that seems to make a lot of sense to me.
I mean, it totally does. And I hope I didn't offend you, man. If you're some big time shed hunter or something, but
not at all. I've probably happened upon 2 sheds in my life, and I wasn't really exactly hunting for them. It's a happenstance thing.
I mean, I'm happy to pick up a cool elk shed or something that I find while I'm out hunting, or while I'm out looking for huckleberries, or while I'm out, mushroom hunting or something. Totally different. But I don't go out and actively shed hunt. And so now that does not apply to some people use shed hunting as a scouting tool for hunting. Right. I got a buddy, Troy, who is a prolific giant mountain public land whitetail killer here in North Idaho.
That sounds awesome.
And this is like a year-round thing for him, where he does go out and tries to find these sheds to track which bucks made it through the hunting season and figure out where they're living because they're going to be in that area when he's hunting. That's I get that, but I still question the entire premise of where, we've got these animals that are already low on calories. And when you bump them out of their winter bed or their winter range, they're burning calories that they can't afford.
Right.
Like they can't afford to burn those calories, but they're, you're chasing them back up the mountain. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast episode, I suppose. I'm keeping you a long time tonight, buddy.
No, you're good. Yeah.
So
that could definitely be a podcast in and of itself. It's a hot topic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I envy you. You live in the Bitterroot Valley. You have this remote job where you just get to write about hunting and go fly fishing in the Bitterroot and hunt Western Montana. It's not a terrible place to be, brother.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to complain about, man. I love it. I love being here. I love this part of Montana that we settled in. I love the whole state, and it's a great job. I enjoy it. It's always been a dream of mine to write for Field and Stream. So, actually being a full-time staff editor for them is pretty unbelievable for me. But
yeah,
sounds like you got a pretty good thing going on up there in North Idaho too, huh?
Yeah, man. We love it. We just absolutely love it. We're in a great spot. Interestingly, my wife and I, we put in, and I don't know if I've ever admitted this, but not that it's bad or anything, but years ago, we put in an offer on a place in Darby, Montana.
Oh, yeah. South of us.
And yeah. So a little further south in the Bitterroot there. But we had to retract the offer because the position that I had applied for, they basically pulled the position, and it was kind of like a remote position, but it wasn't like online. It was like I had to go out and meet with customers or whatever, but it was like a home office remote position. And they decided to pull it from the state of Montana. Wow. Because they felt like the market wasn't big enough. And so it wasn't worth investing in somebody being there full time kind of thing.
Wow.
And so because they made that decision, my wife and I never moved to Darby, Montana, but we found this kick-ass spot. It had this cool stream rolling through the property. It was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 acres, cool old log cabin kind of place. Oh, yeah. This was years ago. A really cool spot. I was pretty bummed there for a while, but things work out for a reason. So we're super happy where we're at. But why don't you tell everybody where they could find you, man?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Travis Hall Media. I'd say that's probably the best place to get me. I don't do much with Facebook, and then of course, just my bylines on the Field and Stream website pretty much on a daily basis, so you can see all of my work there.
So, guys, what I'm going to do in the show notes is I will put Travis's Instagram, and I will also put this Field and Stream /author / Travis Hall website. It's a mouthful. I'll put all that in the show notes, guys. I would encourage you to check it out. It's personally, I feel like Travis, he's a really good writer. He's very articulate, and it was super. There was like some irony involved when you had mentioned the podcast on one of your articles, because I'd read some of your articles, and I had been reading your articles for the past several months.
Oh, nice.
Because I feel like you cover a lot of things that I'm interested in, and so there was some irony involved. And again, man, I'm honored that you mentioned my podcast. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm honored that you had me on here tonight, and I really appreciate you reading my stuff. It's good to hear that I'm putting out some things that you find interesting, because I admire your work as well.
I posted a couple of your articles on my Twitter, so I'm brand new back on Twitter. I have like 10 followers.
Gotta build it back up.
Yeah, we had my old Twitter, it was pretty big, man. We had a couple thousand followers on there, whatever, and it was growing a bunch, but then they were doing all this weird shit, so I just flat out got rid of it.
Yeah.
But with this new change in management, it's pretty fun being on there again.
Yeah,
because that's where I like to go and talk smack to certain demographics.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
You got a little more freedom to do that these days, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Travis, I appreciate you joining me on the show, man. Stick on the line for just a minute, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. From a guy who is, always been intrigued by the whole lifestyle of being a writer, and I've always been interested in it. I'm a terrible writer, but I do try. It's cool having somebody like you that actually does it for a living and is actually really good at it. And just having a discussion on hunting and different topics of what you're interested in, and just keep doing what you're doing, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I appreciate you having me, and thanks again for reading my stuff, man. So it's good to know that it's fallen on some ears out there, so I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman, and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on